So with week 18 of the NFL season finally passing us now on the Monday after Sunday, we have basically all the evidence that we need for the NFL honors that we're going to have in a few months, if I'm not mistaken. And I want to get this out before the playoffs start, because if I let the playoffs start, there might be some biasy in terms of certain teams winning certain ways. The NFL honors is supposed to be a regular season award, in my eyes. So we're going to go about it in that way. So starting off with Coach of the Year. Between him and Dan Quinn, it's a pretty tight spot for me. But with the position that the Vikings were in at the start of the season, with J.J. McCarthy getting a season-ending injury and training camp, to having to look at Sam Darnold, who, had already been on several teams. He'd been on the Panthers, he'd been on the 49ers, he'd been on different teams that he had a chance with. Some would even say the 49ers was a perfect chance for him with Kyle Shanahan, but it didn't work out. But Kevin has been able to make him more than a capable QB, and he may not be a game changer, but he is one of the best game managers. I know he didn't have a crazy game against the Lions, but we're also talking about the Detroit Lions, who have one of the best defensive coordinators in the league, one of the best offensive coordinators in the league, and one of the best head coaches. And if it wasn't for Kevin O'Connell making the difference that he made with this Vikings team, going 14-2 with a QB that they weren't even expecting to have at the starter position, I would be giving this to Dan Campbell 100%. And I know most people want to give it to Dan Campbell because of the dominance that the Lions have had most of the season. But in my opinion, I still think that Coach of the Year should go to Kevin O'Connell. But again, with all that, I still think that Dan Quinn was also in contention for this. He obviously has an argument, since he has been able to turn around this organization that once upon a time was struggling to be sold to a group of buyers. And it hasn't been without the help of Jayden Daniels and their new draft pick, which I'm sure he had a heavy hand in picking whenever he did come in, which makes him a top candidate with sticking and picking over Drake May. Although I still think that it probably would have been the same result. I think Drake May is just as talented, just not a great situation. They just fired his first head coach. I don't understand how you drop Gerard Mayo after his first year. I'm sure that they're just going to have something in mind going forward with that head coaching position. But yeah, Daniels just seems to be the better quarterback as of right now. But moving on to Comeback Player of the Year, I am going to have Joe Burrow taking that award. There's not really much to question about this one. He's won it once with coming back from a bad injury. I think it was his rookie year that he had to come back from. And now he's doing it again. And it's just clear he's the winner of the Comeback Award, with how he's been so persistent every time that he sustains an injury that takes him out for the season. And it just amazes me, the talent that Joe Burrow is. He has put himself single-handedly in MVP conversations with basically only the help of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and his receiving options, and only his offense. Clearly his defense is just... They showed up in the last few games, which I can respect because they showed up when it mattered. But unfortunately, they were eliminated. And right now, I think that it would have been between him and Sam Darnold, but I think they did change the criteria to be able to win Comeback Player of the Year, and it has to be from injury. So it can't be from him being a possible bust before to now being one of the better QBs in the league or game managers in the league. I think at the end of the day, Joe Burrow is definitely winning by a landslide in Comeback Player of the Year. And I don't know if he's going to love getting a second NFL honors of Comeback Player of the Year, but I don't think he'll be complaining. Now we get into one of the awards that I think a lot of people are going to be paying attention to. I think a lot of people are going to be curious as to who actually wins this award. But before you start typing, hear me out. Quinyon Mitchell is my Defensive Rookie of the Year. I'm not an Eagles fan, but I have been a fan of Mitchell since he did go to Toledo. And I wanted him to go to another team the whole way, but unfortunately teams just didn't listen, and the Eagles ended up snagging him up, and he is making the impact that, I mean, he has changed this Eagles secondary completely. Before I say too much about Mitchell, though, I did want to involve these two other guys that I have loved seeing excel at the next level, and that's Kamari Lassiter and Jared Verse. Jared Verse, like Quinyon Mitchell, was one of my favorite prospects coming out of last year's draft, and him and Fisk being able to stay on the same line is beautiful because they have that chemistry, they have that type of connection to be able to click on certain plays. But Fisk is such a talented interior player, which makes him an honorable mention, but I don't think he's in the running. But Jared Verse has been excelling at all levels this season, and specifically him being able to break up the run game and make teams pass the ball with how quick he is able to get off the ball and into the backfield. It's truly something to watch. With 11 TFLs, 18 QB hits, and 4.5 sacks, he's just had an all-around great season with a star-studded defensive line that is starting to develop more and more and more, and shaping into Fisk and Kobe on the same line and developing all together. Kamari Lassiter, I will keep it brief so we can talk more about Mitchell, but Lassiter has simply been the type of guy that disrupts plays, and in the biggest moments too. Every time that I see Kamari Lassiter make a big play for the Texans, it's very impressive because it's going out of his way, doing what he needs to do to be able to either pat down the ball, make a big stop or big tackle to stop him from getting to the first down mark. He just puts so much effort into each and every play. But I think that Lassiter has definitely been more of the shutdown corner. I know that Stingley is playing on the same secondary as him, but it could just be that the size difference between Kamari Lassiter and Derek Stingley makes it that way. For my DPOY and Quinyon Mitchell, his bare stats will not jump off the page to you, or to the I'm not calling you a casual viewer, but the overall casual viewer, since he doesn't have much of flashy stats, and honestly, he does not have a single interception on the season. But this man can play corner like the best of them. I think he has resemblance of Darrelle Revis because he is just simply able to make QBs look the other way when he is in the same space as their top QBs. He is 9th in pass breakups when he has faced the top wideouts. He has allowed 5 yards to Drake London, 23 to Olave, 19 to Mike Evans, 10 to Cooper Kupp, 9 to Malik Neighbors, and 16 to Jamar Chase, who has been infamous for taking the top off of defenses, but it hasn't been on Quinyon Mitchell. He has been amazing talent coming into the league, and he is one of the main reasons the Eagles have went from 31st ranked defense to allowed the 10th fewest yards in each and every game. And Cooper DeJean has also been another reason and is an honorable mention of mine. But moving on to what is my offensive rookie of the year, and I think this is going to start getting a little heated. Maybe even defensive rookie of the year had some people questioning the Quinyon Mitchell pick because a lot of people say Jared Verse. But my offensive rookie of the year through and through is just, it should be a clear choice. There's a good amount of talent on the offensive side that could win this award, like Malik Neighbors or Bo Nix, although his hot streak did come to a close, except for that last game. They had a crazy last game, blowing out the Chiefs. I know it was against all their second stringers, but holding them to 0 points and scoring 34 or 38, I can't remember what specifically it was. I still have the clear choice being Jayden Daniels. We have all seen him with not only watching games, but for the casual viewer who just sees clips on social media, this man has had plays that some of the greats haven't even had. From a Hail Mary that actually worked in the last seconds to a full field touchdown with Scary Terry getting through the opening that Jayden led him into to get the possible game-tying touchdown, but the kicker ended up missing the extra point. He has 25 touchdowns and 9 interceptions with 3,500 yards total. And now we'll have the pleasure of seeing him in the playoffs with him leading this team to a wild card spot. And it's ironic that I talk about Quinyon Mitchell as Jayden Daniels just absolutely cooked up the Eagles defense in the second half of this game. My defensive player of the year is between two players. I thoroughly enjoy watching defenses. I've loved watching defenses play since growing up, and that kind of shows because the Seahawks at one point when I was growing up was my favorite team because of the Legion of Boom, and that era will forever be my favorite era of a team. But that goes to show I can appreciate all forms of the defense, and I've grown a fondness for the art of the front seven and the secondary. I've been a big fan in the past few years of PS2 Patrick Surtain II on the Broncos, who in my eyes is the best corner in the league, and I think he has been for a while, or the past couple years. And with not only his raw talent but his discipline on each and every play, he's a pleasure to watch every Sunday, and he will continue to be for the rest of his career. He leaves opposing QBs to a 55.6 passer rating and 59% completion percentage, with 4 interceptions to complement that. But with that being said, my DPOI is going to be TJ Watt. TJ Watt, game in and game out, is the most dominant game wrecker on the field at all times. As his brother once was for the Houston Texans, he makes this Pittsburgh team as good as it is because he makes it easy for the rest of the defense to be dominant when he's on the line. His 11.5 sacks and 19 TFLs ranks him in the top 5 in the NFL, and he has done much more than what the stats can show. He even has 6 forced fumbles, which is the league high, and he makes it all look way too easy for a defensive end to be so good at what he does. For as long as he stays healthy, the Steelers are playoff contenders. If they even had a competent offense, they could be Super Bowl contenders as well. But for right now, I have TJ Watt winning another DPOI for 2025. And I did want to mention Xavier McKinney has also had a hell of a season. 8 interceptions, has really been the rejuvenation of that Packers secondary since Jair Alexander can't stay on the field. Moving on to Offensive Player of the Year. Saquon has been one of the best backs in the league. And he's finally getting his recognition and staying healthy long enough to do so. With this full season, he was only 100 yards short of breaking the single-season rushing record, and by significantly less snaps. As much as Eric Dickerson wants to talk about games, he was significantly lower in the amount of snaps that he had, since nowadays they don't run the ball as much as they did back then. The run game was the basis around every good team, and Eric Dickerson was a great running back. But Saquon opens up this passing offense, which tends to be the focus on most teams, and especially the Eagles with their pass. But Saquon in this backfield, who has now had 125 yards per game, which is the highest average since Derrick Henry, who had 126 in 2027, which was an insane year for a running back. For Derrick Henry himself, it was just a wild year to watch football, with Derrick Henry just tearing up defenses, bouncing heads off of the field. I mean, it was just something to behold. He wins by a landslide, and the only other way I see someone making any competition is if one of the QBs lose the MVP and they want to give them this. But I don't think you can take this away from Barkley at this point in time, just because he's just had such a season. You can't not give it to this man. I mean, 100 yards short, he honestly could have gotten it if they let him play. I think he could have gotten it in literally like 4 plays with the way that he's able to break out for big runs like this. It's an unmatched talent. But now we are going to move on to the MVP conversation. Before I get into who I have winning the MVP conversation, I'll go over my candidates. I have Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow. Starting with Joe Burrow, again, he has single-handedly brought this Bengals defense back into contention, and his stats to be able to do so has been outstanding, and we've only seen it from 2 other players, and their names are Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, and who conveniently in both seasons won MVP. My only downside with giving this to Joe Burrow is his record and the fact that they're not in the playoffs. You seriously can't consider too much to give this MVP award to somebody that wasn't able to lead their team earlier. But if the Bengals were winning their division or even in contention, this would be an easy pick. But them being in the position that they're in now, it makes it difficult. But moving on to Josh Allen, can we just agree that Josh is a new Superman? I mean, all love to Cam Newton, but Josh every game always finds a way to win or to at least make it close, which he hasn't had to do most games because they just absolutely blow out teams at points. Watching Josh Allen would show more about why he is in heavy contention for this award with the way that he's able to play with the defense. He's able to stay in the pocket for the right amount of time. He's able to get out of the pocket and into the defense. Somehow, he always finds a way to make a play in those moments or just make the smart decision and throw it away. And he is doing all of this with no number one receiver. He has James Cook, Keon Coleman, Mac Hollins, and Khalil Shakir. I mean, his best receiver is Khalil Shakir, and he would not even be a wide receiver 2 on probably 31 other teams in the league. Unless, I can't even think, maybe the Giants. But that's saying something. Khalil Shakir is very talented, but Josh Allen makes him look so much better. But the maturity that he has gained in the past couple years, especially since last with losing Stephon Diggs, we saw a little bit more growth last year whenever he didn't have to rely on him. But he's been that game changer that he is, and he's been very impressive. There is a counter argument to all of this, though. And that is his running back. James Cook is, or was, actually, the leader in rushing touchdowns right above Derrick Henry. Now Jahmyr Gibbs is number 1. Because he just had a 4-touchdown game. It could make all the difference when it comes down to the final votes. But we'll talk a little bit more afterwards about that. But finally, Lamar Jackson. I don't know how he's been able to do it, but he's gotten even better once again. And specifically, statistically. Improving on all of his stats with less interceptions. He only had 4 picks all season. More touchdowns and more yards overall. He has truly become the QB that the Ravens hope he would when they gave him that extension, and he might even become more with all the pieces around him. This also tends to be the counter against his MVP case, though. With them acquiring Derrick Henry in the offseason, getting more development from players like Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, Isaiah Likely, Kyle Hamilton on the defense making big plays, it helps the defense be as good as they are and have as much success for the QB as they can. With all that being said, though, my MVP is going to be Josh Allen. To anyone who has watched a single Bills game the entire season can see the way that he is simply able to do things like that. He just cut through a Chiefs defense, fully healthy Chiefs defense. Chris Jones on the line, Drew Tranquill, Nick Bolton missed a tackle, their safeties not being able to take him down. He is just a unit. And from the QB who couldn't stop throwing interceptions to having a career low, and should have been even lower if it wasn't for drop balls, bobbled balls by Keon Coleman, who popped them up and then it would go to the defense. Josh has made this Buffalo Bills team an extreme contender. And I don't want to say specifically where, because I wouldn't want to jinx it for Josh. But to me, he is the most valuable player. And he describes every aspect of the word with that because he does not have the powerhouse Lamar has in Baltimore. Although, I think it will be a tight race. I think Josh deserves it more. My counter to people who say Cook has the most rushing touchdowns or is top 3 in rushing touchdowns and above Derrick Henry, he's below 1,000 yards. Which the Ravens cannot say about Derrick Henry because Derrick Henry has 1,700 plus. If Saquon wasn't having the season that he was having, Derrick Henry would have the most rushing yards. It's just that simple. He's a wrecking ball, and he's always been. Josh gets them close for James to be even able to get to that goal line, to get those touchdowns, and be able to feed James Cook and get him to get that confidence and build that self-esteem. But James Cook is a talented back, but he's not any Derrick Henry. You just can't compare the two. With that, I am very, very confident in my choices of the awards. If you have any opinions against them, let me know down in the comments below. I love having a conversation about these. I always love having debates, having conversations about different players. I know that the Defensive Rookie of the Year is something that people probably will disagree with. I know for sure a lot of people are going to disagree with MVP, so I know that's going to be a big one. But while you're down there, please like so more people can see it. We can get this conversation going even more, and subscribe so you don't miss out on the rest of the NFL content that we're going to have coming out here. But I'm excited for the playoffs. I'm excited to see how both of these QBs play. We might even see them again, which Josh might have to prove himself in that game for voters to really be convinced that he's better, because the last time these two faced off, Derrick Henry had an absolute day, which shows another thing. Lamar Jackson didn't have to do a damn thing the day that they played, because Derrick Henry got 200 plus yards, I think like 2 or 3 touchdowns. There was no stopping Derrick Henry that day. That just makes it so much easier for me to make my decision that Josh Allen is the most valuable player, because you take him off of the Buffalo Bills, they're not even outside of the top 5 in the draft. While you take Lamar Jackson off the Baltimore Ravens, they could probably win a lot more games than the Bills could. But I will see you in the next video. Peace.